And we're back. We're here with Simon Treselyan, and he is our special guest today on Making Life Brighter Radio. And he's here to continue to talk with us about all the different things that we were going through on the actual program itself. And if you want to hear the actual program, you can go back to Making Life Brighter Radio, and on the radio tab, you'll find the player. And there we have all the archives. So thank you for being here. It's a real honor, truly. And, we were talking about your books, about your seminars, about all that your training would drive you to, and how you've turned that around and become someone that is helping our world and making our lives brighter, really. So
that's what it's all about, isn't it? At the end of the day.
It is. And I would like to talk about control a little bit, because we were discussing some things, and control is something that we need, but it's also something that we need to use differently in going forward in today's day and age. So what can you say about control?
In order to exert control, you have to have power. Okay, so if you can imagine, this is why they invented power steering in cars, so you didn't have to do the whole sort of pulling things around. So the more power that you have, the more control you can exert. So that works for the controlling of a child, controlling your finances, controlling a relationship, controlling a political system, for instance. So when there is no power, there is no control, and then you become powerless to create any change. So control creates change, doesn't it? So when we're actually think about when we're driving, it's interesting, it's a statistic that when you're actually driving along a road, 99% of the time you're actually off course. So, and if you don't believe me, hold the steering wheel tight and see if you can do it for more than 30 seconds without freaking out. So that's I think a really interesting analogy when you consider it. So we all strive for power, and most relationships have a power balance. Where someone is trying to either overpower the other or gift power to them, to empower people, to bring them up. So that's my initial take would be, the more power you have, the more control that you have.
As we go forward, and with your ideology based on the work that you're doing and creating, is it better to have a control going forward, or is it better to release over to spirit? And is that considered control?
Well, that is the ultimate question, isn't it? Because in gifting power away, that's the ultimate control, isn't it?
Is it?
It's the irony of it, isn't it?
It's like the will versus allowing something greater that you're deferring to.
In a lot of the older systems of apprenticeship moving into mastery, the last part of mastery is surrender. And we see this even with, I suppose, Jesus Christ on the cross, the gifting over of that. And you see this certainly in like Freemasonic thought and a lot of secret societies, is that they divest you of everything. They strip you of everything that you can hold on into this world, to say, you are now powerless. Now is the time to take your power back. And it's like they gift you that power back, and then all of a sudden now you're empowered. So I think that is really, really important, and you see that in so many traditions as well. But it's the act of surrender. Even that is such a choice, and you can only do that from a position of self-empowerment or knowledge that there is something better. Yeah.
The shift towards surrender, the letting go into that, in other words.
Yeah, that's right. It's a release.
It's a relinquish of control, technically, but it's a choice.
It's a choice.
So
and choice is the ultimate control.
I was going to say.
Yeah.
So we're back to choice being the power.
Yes, it does.
And if we don't have choices, then in a way we're powerless.
That's right. And the thing is I always call this the law of requisite variety.
Interesting.
In that the person that has most choices available to them will always win the conflict. So if your child has 3 reasons why they shouldn't go to bed and you have 4 reasons why they should, guess who wins the conflict? So you have to have these choices, and choices are made either through having skills to create those choices, or through circumstance, or through achieving a power balance. that gives you more choice. So and you see this with different political systems as well. I mean, right now you have a choice of left or right. I mean, that's it. It's like, well, what if you don't like either of them? Well, it's like tough. You got to choose one. So that becomes a real problem in your democracy, which
it's never been a democracy.
Well, because it's a constitutional republic. Obviously, it's not a democracy. But the fact is that once people realise that they have the power of choice, as opposed to just voting for a bunch of politicians that are all going to do the same thing, because for whether it be corruption or whatever that is going on, it does seem much for muchness. It doesn't matter which party you vote for, you get the same stuff. Whereas I used to like the Roman element, which was basically there weren't any parties then, so each magistrate had to stand by their own values of what they purported to be, and if people believed them, they would vote them into the Senate. So now you've got these 200 senators that are all independent thinking people, which meant that if you needed a minister for war, you chose them out of everybody, not just your particular party. So you're not just dealing with 50% of the pool. And if anyone had a good idea, they'd put it up, and if it was voted as a good idea and the majority said that's a good idea, it got done. And if everyone thought it was a bad idea, it didn't get done. That's democracy.
I like that democracy better.
I think we all do.
We have limited choices in this country.
And who's responsible for that?
The people that vote or actually don't vote.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting because I'm going to segue here just for a minute on that note. America has never had a president that didn't have money behind them. You've never had a poor president in the U.S.
Yeah, I also think it's interesting that they're never poor afterwards. So when you consider that, like for instance, you can pick any president you want. We know through public records what they come in with,
right?
All right, because they have to declare it. We know what they get paid because it comes out of the public purse. So how come when they get out, they're worth like 50, 100, 200 million? Where did that come from?
Where did that come from?
Exactly, and that's the question that we as people are supposed to need to be asking more.
Now, how is that? What do you feel about the government, for example, in England?
I think that what you're seeing in most Western democracies is much the same. Two-party system with a basic third, which sometimes holds the balance of power, which is a problem sometimes because it means that you get more extreme views that are being pushed to an agenda in order just to keep your majority. Okay, so we're seeing that with like the Green parties and stuff like that. So I think that becomes a problem, but it's still probably better than some of the other problem areas that we have in other. I mean, just pick a continent. You've got corruption in Africa. You've got massive corruption and a one-party system in China, the largest country in the world. It's probably the same. I mean, it's like Putin or Putin. In Africa, in Russia. So you get all of these. Everyone's got challenges with the system, and you're never going to get a true democracy. I think it's a myth, to be honest. What I do believe is the power of people to make the correct choices, and I'm a great believer in smaller government, not larger government. I think that most things can be dealt with on a localized level as opposed to a federal level, apart from probably defense and fiscal taxing, for instance. I think it's probably that. I mean, you've got to remember with America, it's a continent. It's got 9 distinct areas which have been identified by FEMA, strangely enough, that these are cultural areas. So the Appalachian Mountains are different to the Midwest, which are different to the East Coast and the West Coast. They are different countries, and they're bigger than Europe as well. So
it's like the division that's coming up as the vote this November for California.
Yeah, and again, even when you segue it down, I mean, California is like the 5th largest economy in the world, but the people in the north are so different to the people in LA, which are so different to the people in San Diego. You might as well have a whole country, So I think it makes sense to have a smaller way, because if the power is totally concentrated in the cities. You get a city view over people that don't have a city view at all in the rural communities. And what is important to each of those communities, I think, is not necessarily being seen. So, you know, I'm a great believer in local councils stepping up and taking much more of the responsibility and less oversight, or shall I say overreach, by the federal thing, which is all really just about power at the end of the day. It's giving jobs to people that want them, you know.
And favoring those in positions that would assist you in your power.
I think it's interesting though that, you know, I think it was only like either 1 or 2 Congress people were millionaires before they went into Congress, and yet there are 324 millionaires in Congress right now. It's like, really? You know, not bad for $120,000 a year.
For a public servant job, technically, right?
Yeah, that's right.
What do you think about nobility? What does nobility mean to you?
Nobility. Well, I mean, there are two areas of that. There is this nobility that is acquired by birthright, you know, which you see a lot in England, of course, with the monarchies. And there is a nobleness of spirit, I think, as well. When people talk about nobility, they talk of something that is higher, that is almost nostalgic in a way, going back to a better time. And I think this alludes really back to, I suppose, the old bloodlines, you know, and this is why the royal houses are so fanatical about marrying within the bloodlines to keep the bloodline pure. Even the old thing of the Messianic legacy was that from the bloodline of David, the Messiah will come, you know, will be recognized by the reincarnation of Elijah at the falls, and would actually then be baptized and rise to his power at the age of 33. That was the prophecy. So I think when you actually look at that, when you look at the line of David, we have this thing called kingship. Yeah. So the line of the king, but that devolves from the word kin as well, kinship. So kinship and kingship are the same. So it's the bloodline of the kin, because your kin are your family. And what changed, I think, was during the Vatican times when they changed the Merovingian line, which was the line of David, with all the royal houses, into the Carolinian line, which was just subjugated and just put into by the Vatican. And that became a real problem because these were feudal lords that all of a sudden became kings, and they weren't from the original kinship or the kingship of the line of David.
How do you think that changed history?
I think it changed it quite remarkably because all of a sudden then you've got people like the Borgias coming in and becoming pope, and I think that's where the major corruption came, because you weren't talking of people that have an ideological basis, you're talking of people that had a financial mercenary basis, and that's been the same ever since, you know. I mean, the Vatican Church is still called, the official name is the Poor Church of Jesus Christ, and yet it's worth 25 billion in property and 10 billion in artwork, you know, and they can't solve child poverty. So I do feel that anything is beautiful, certainly in nature, until mankind gets hold of it.
Isn't it interesting? It seems to become corrupted,
yeah.
And yet we're the only species that can think outside of instinct, and we have an option to evolve.
Well, we can actually future pace. We can actually see the consequences of our action, but they don't seem to care. I mean, for instance, like how many things on a packet of cigarettes do you have to have showing horrible things that's going to happen to your body? This will kill you, and people go, I'll have another 20, please. It's like they can see the connected sequence of what is likely to happen. They are told that scientifically that every time they put a cigarette in their mouth, that's 7 minutes off your life. It's like, what would you do at the end of your life for another 7 minutes? It's like, you'd pay anything, you'd do anything.
Well, does that then speak to the idea that they don't value life?
I think it's partly that. I also think it's partly the corruption of the tobacco companies to put chemicals into those things. You know, because tobacco is actually not an addictive substance, but the 160 chemicals that they put in are, you know, and that's what changes the receptors in the brain. And, you know, I mean, that's... You've
done so many things between writing, now producing films.
Eventually, we will be.
Soon.
Yep.
Soon. You're moving into a platform that will be received worldwide. And you've already done all these things around the world. You've taken people on these spiritual journeys to Machu Picchu and Glastonbury. Of those places, what struck you as the most? There has to be a differential in those vortexes. Let's talk about that for a minute before we go back to my question. What's the place that really struck you the most out of those vortexes, and why?
I always think Egypt, because it's obviously the oldest civilization that we know of. It has such a deep and profound understanding of a long lost civilization where arguably they were more advanced than we are now. I mean, and it disappeared. I mean, the Egyptians there now are not the Egyptians that we see on the walls.
Right.
They even look different. This was a totally different nation, a totally different civilization. And of course, that's now been sequestered by the Arabs that came in and took over after the Egyptians had long lost gone. We saw the same thing with the Mayans in South America. But I think Egypt has that because of the sheer volume. I mean, with everything that's in the Smithsonian, everything that's in the Louvre, in the Royal Museum, in the British Museum in London, and everything that's in Egypt is still only 1/5 of what that civilization was.
Yeah.
So a lot of it's still underground.
Yeah.
So I think that for me has such a profound understanding from my point of reason, from my intellect that wants to understand more. When you're talking about a real deep, earthy, just a feeling, it's got to be Uluru in Australia, Ayers Rock.
Really?
It's the largest piece of rock in the world. What you see is large, but it actually goes down 7 miles. This is a huge piece of
Wow.
rock.
Wow,
and you can feel it. You can actually feel the thing, So that is very profound for me in a very, very different way to Egypt. Egypt, it hits me here every time. Uluru hits me right down the bottom, and it's like, whoa, this is powerful. And then when you get to places like Glastonbury, it's like this opening of the heart. It's the heart center of the world, and it's a beautiful feminine center all around the area of Avebury as well. So each of them has a distinct flavor. It's almost like saying, well, Texas has a distinct flavor to Oregon, to
Right.
New York, to Miami, They all have something different, and yet they're all part of the same, Yeah. So I think that a lot of the time in the travels, people would be attracted to that point in time where they needed the energy of that.
The grounding, or
like
some places.
Hawaii. I used to take people to Kauai, which is
I love that. That's my favorite.
Beautiful place because that opens up the crown. Because it's 7 islands, and each island has the color which corresponds to the 7 chakras, and the kahunas used to train on the top one. It's as simple as that. So so I always, by the way that people would choose where they did their mastery, told me a lot about themselves. Even that choice of, I want to do it in Australia, I want to do it at Uluru, or I want to do it in Glastonbury, or I want to do it in Hawaii. Just that action of choice, and we were talking about choice before, set the scene for what they were likely to get back. So you're creating an intention. And as soon as you create an intention, you're automatically moving towards the outcome. It's like the same with any type of ritual. When you do a ritual and you say, right, we're going to stand up, we're going to say these things, and when they're going to do 3 hymns, 4 Hail Marys, one of those, and in that moment you will find communion with God. Well, if you go through the system, then most people are actually going to get the outcome because you're creating that ritual around it. So what if you could create your own rituals? What if you could create your own intention, which was so strong and so powerful, and that you could embrace it and believe it, that you could actually acquire that outcome at your will, not someone else's?
I think I do.
Exactly right. But wouldn't it be nice if everyone did that?
Yeah.
How much brighter would life be?
Exactly. Touche. But how would they do that? It's the how that really stops people in this world. It's not the what. It's sometimes people have to wake up to the what, I believe. But
you know what it is?
How.
The big thing, the big question is why. Because when your why is so powerful and so gorgeous, your what becomes really easy.
Yeah.
And therefore the how is merely the stuff. That's just the list of things to do. That's the how. That's the easy part. You know?
Why would I be doing this? Why do I
Yeah.
want to learn that? Why do I want to achieve that?
Yeah.
Why do I need to
Because-
take anything into
Well, the thing
account?
is, as soon as you understand what that why is, all of a sudden, just in doing that, it shows the gap. It's what we call in business a gap analysis. You know, so you look at what you got, you look at where you want to go, and you realize what's missing. You know, now if we're able to define our purpose by that why, and we know we don't have that,
Yeah.
now we can identify what's missing. If you know what's missing, you can then identify where to go and get that, or who to acquire it from. And that's why good teachers and good masters, you know, are there. And they say when the student's ready, the master will come. So, but they won't come if you don't know what your why is.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. I love that. Thank you. I love that. Are you a
Yeah.
master?
I'm a master of some things. I'm a student in others. And I think that any master that says, yeah, that's it, I'm done, this is now a closed loop, I don't need to learn anything more, then you really need to learn a lot more.
Right.
So I always wake up in the morning and I say, have I learned everything that I need to learn? And if I'm still breathing, I obviously haven't, you know? So I think that we can all be masters of some areas, you know? But I think it becomes a real problem when you think that you've done it.
Yeah. I don't ever want to think that I've done it. But
Being a
I would
student is
like
awesome.
to be off this cycle. That would be nice. I think that's the why when I was born. You know, what's going on here? This doesn't seem something is wrong with this system that's working here, although
Yeah.
it's perfect. Okay? So
And you think, well, why is that?
yeah.
And then there's a question, of course, why me?
Yeah.
And of course the answer is why not?
And then what?
Yeah,
What's
yeah.
next?
If not me, who? If not now, when? If
And-
not now, this, what?
Do you practice meditation? Do you practice a skill today that dials you in?
I'd love to be able to say yes. I'd love to say, yeah, I'm this amazing sort of spiritual person that taps in. No, I don't. Meditation usually finds me. And it finds me usually when I'm not prepared for it. So all of a sudden, boom, and
Sort of like you're writing.
Yeah, and I don't believe that you have to necessarily have the discipline to say, right, it's 9 o'clock, it's my meditation time. You know, I always find that if spirit knows when you're available, they'll make themselves available, because time doesn't actually matter, of course. We know that we only have a perception of time because we have a sun and a moon.
Right.
If we had a different sun and a different moon, we have a different perception of time. So time can't exist. That's just a fact of life. So, you know, I think we create our space for that. And if you're in the, it's like tuning in a radio. You know, if you tune into
I use this analogy all the time.
Exactly right. And the
Yes.
thing is that you can tune in or tune out, can't you? But as soon as you hit the right frequency, guess what? It opens up for everyone that's on the same frequency to experience the same things, you know? And I think that's the important thing, is that you have to have a range of frequencies that are in service to you and in service to your particular mastery at that time. And they may change. And you've got to be open to that change. Otherwise, you become this, and we've all seen them, these old masters that have done the same thing for 20, 30, 50 years, and they will not change.
Right.
They're teaching the same stuff as they were taught in the 70s. You know, I like to think that we're all evolving, you know, and every now and then you just shed that skin and just step out into this new iteration of yourself.
You look different in doing that.
Yeah.
You just did that.
Yeah, well,
You literally
should
just
do it
did
more,
that. You
huh?
did. He was gonna, his energy just went zoom.
That's what I'd love to see, and this is why when I teach my courses, I create the environment of which that can happen. I can't change people. None of us can change people.
Right.
You know, what we can do is create the environment in which change can occur. It's the same with healing. No one heals anybody. We all heal ourselves, but different people are able to resonate in such a manner that they make that healing transition really, really easy, and that's what I detect with you. So you have this environment where it's like, oh, this is easy to do, and there's no barrier.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no restriction.
Yeah.
There's no resistance.
So resistance is futile.
Resistance is the only thing I think that keeps us from moving forward.
Yeah, and persistence defeats resistance.
Exactly. Now there's some wisdom. So if you were to go back in time and change anything that your course of action in the world that you've gone through, would you change it, or would you continue to?
I work on the theory that, again, with this connected sequence of events, if you change any part of the equation, you change the outcome, don't you? Mm-hmm. Well, I'm actually pretty okay with the outcome. I've had to go through a lot of stuff. Was it uncomfortable? Absolutely. Would it have been nicer to have a much easier life? True. But I work on the theory of, don't wish for things to be easier, just wish that you were better. Because,
I love that.
I've actually overcome all of those things to get where I am now. Why would I go back and make that easier? It's like cutting the chrysalis of a butterfly and never flying. It's like these things strengthened my spiritual and emotional muscles to get to the point now where I'm actually of value to people. I'm of value now. If I'd have had an easier life before this, I would probably be worthless to anybody else, and I wouldn't be speaking to you.
I love that. It's coming from a male. Do we hear that? I love that. Thank you for saying that, really, because especially right now, we have this turnabout in our world where women are feeling their power and coming up into it. And actually, if we go back to our initial conversation, they're feeling their choices.
You realize that you always did have that.
Yes.
All right.
Oh yeah.
So this is the thing.
I believe that.
Exactly.
Yes.
And this has been the great disservice to the divine feminine, that masculinity, especially in the form of religion, has placed upon. Because when you actually look at the subjugation of women, it's all religious. It's very little is cultural.
There used to be 13 cycles, not 12.
Yeah, absolutely. But when you look at the religions now, I mean, Islam is not a women-friendly religion, nor necessarily is Judaism, nor is Buddhism, which is actually the nicest one, because you cannot aspire to nirvana as a woman. You can actually be the best woman ever, and they'll go, great, hopefully next time you'll be reincarnated as a man. Yeah? and Christianity, we've only now started to put female priests in positions of power, so that has never really been good for, We've seen this really ever since the origins of the pagan moon religions and Neanderthal, being subjugated by the sun religions that have come in, which are patriarchal, and I think that there is this swing now, and we're starting to see it because there is a swing within our society as well. There's all sorts of things going on, even with gender. That you're starting to see men becoming more sensitive in a way and probably less aggressive. We're starting to see women stepping into their power and taking that back. I think we've got more women in cabinet positions now, which is interesting, under a person that they label as a misogynist, than they've ever been in any government. Right. We're seeing now women taking power. You got the strongest woman in Europe is Merkel. For as long as she's going to stay in. But what we are doing, I believe that because women are different in a fundamental way to men, and the worst thing we can do is for women to try and assume male dominance by the way that males do it, because they become inauthentic. And I think that's a problem. Women need to embrace that femininity. That's their power, and they've been told that it isn't powerful.
Right.
But it is. It's the most powerful. It's the biggest secret. So men have been trying to steer you away from that for a long time. See, the thing is,
because they're fearful of being controlled by that.
But the
woman won't control him. That's what they don't understand. The
woman
women
won't
control.
They do.
Well, some do now, but technically, women will nurture. They'll support.
Yes,
they won't
they
control.
Are, because the fundamental difference is that women can give life and men can't.
I think if women are properly protected, they won't control.
Yeah, when they feel safe.
Right.
It comes down to the hunter and the gatherer, But what you find, I think, is that women really know life because they feel life inside of them. What more powerful human emotion can you get? So when it comes down to shall we go to war, the woman goes, oh my God, that's a whole bunch of women that gave birth to those people out there, and oh, I'm not sure I want to go with this. Whereas a man goes, yeah, we got more than you, so that's fine. We can always breed more, you know. So it's just collateral. That's how men look at it.
I know.
Yeah,
It's not good.
So my theory is put all women in positions of power. They should be all heads of state. Every woman should be. It should be illegal for a man to be a head of state, because then you'd get rid of most wars.
That's true.
You know, and this thing about marriage, right? A woman is walked up the aisle and handed to another man. It's like, what part of cattle don't you understand? You know, I believe it should be the other way around, because you know what happens? What a woman does, what a mother does, she is preparing her boy for another woman.
Interesting, yeah.
That is what's really going on.
Mm-hmm.
It should be the mother, the nurturer, who has given life to this boy, who has loved this boy all of his life, to the point now where she is going to be not irrelevant in his life, unless you're Italian and become a mummy's boy, yeah? But she's going to be, her pivotal role of being the nurturer, the lover of that person, she now steps aside. What better way for her to give the boy to the new woman? That, to me, is how it should be.
I think that's a brilliant idea. I think we should employ that now. I think that's
Absolutely.
a very, very profound change.
And what it would do is it
Symbolically.
would, yeah, and I think culturally as well, it will show that women are not, you know, just objects to be given, you know, as a pact or to unify two warring states, or how it used to be. It was like, well, we're going to give you this, then we don't go to war together. It's like, you know, and that is what's created all this problem.
It's giving something so you can use it.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with honoring what you've been given, which goes back to
Exactly
the
right.
idea of nobility. What is nobility?
Yeah, it's about doing what is right, not necessarily what is legal.
What do you think about humility? Because you had to deal with that, being able to be the leader, be the killer possibly, or the person that outthinks the other person, and also you had to stand down at different times.
Humility is a useful tool. If you use it too much, you lose power. If you use it too little, you become arrogant and you believe in your own press, and you know, it becomes a problem. So I think humility is like salt. You know, used it sparingly. It actually creates, you know, taste and value.
Be sure to have some potassium on the side.
Yeah. I think people respect humility in its pure form, but they don't respect humility in its base form, which is like an apologetic. Mm-hmm. So when people become apologists for other people, that's not respected. People don't like victims, truth be known. They really don't.
They
don't respect them. Yeah. Because, you know, it's like a dog. If you show fear, is the dog going to stop? No, your dog is going to go, oh, great, I love this. It's a great game, you know?
Yeah.
You've got to show that ability to be strong when you need to, but be humble in accepting of that. And I think what humility does, it shows gratitude, and that's the key element here. Because when you become humble, you're saying, thank you for allowing me to serve you. And I appreciate this situation, because you're now giving me this wonderful accolade saying I'm an amazing person, whatever. But you're now back in control, because you're giving that back as gratitude. And I think when you have that attitude of gratitude, people like that. They like to know that what they've given to you is being respected and honored. You know, how many times have you tried to give someone, they go, oh, no, you should, no, take it back. You're going, take the present. Because you want to feel the joy of giving, and the joy of gratitude, which is to me one of the more refined emotions in humankind.
I think that's true, and I think there's a reciprocal effect to that. If I give something to you and you receive it well, and you're joyful, I receive back that joy, and that energy literally goes round.
Yes,
so it
because you
becomes
remember
even.
it. And there's that remembrance of all the good things, which then sets you up for the next situation, doesn't it? You go,
Right.
oh, I remember that person. Gave me that beautiful flowers, you know?
And I feel that.
And therefore, your intention for that next meeting is going to be enhanced, you know? And therefore, the whole experience is enhanced.
Let's dive off the deep end for 1 minute.
Okay.
All right? You've talked about angels inspiring you and profound moments you had when you were young. What about past lives? Do you believe in past lives?
I think, see, as soon as you go into this and it's a minefield, because as soon as you go into past lives, we're automatically then going back to think that there is this linear equation.
I would say that.
All right, because I was
Yeah.
this and I was that, and it isn't interesting when people talk about past lives. How many Cleopatras and Napoleons have you met? It's like no one was just someone.
Everyone was the queen.
You just want to think that you were someone more important. Given what I said before, in that. Any other planet with a different sun and a different moon is going to have a different perception of time. Therefore, and I think Einstein thought this as well, is that time was actually circular, so that past, present, and future are happening simultaneously. Mm-hmm. So the only thing that we can actually be absolutely sure of is what's happening in the now, right here, right now. That's the only thing that we can touch, and it is real. The past, what I did yesterday, is a remembrance that I'm having chemically in the now.
Right.
The future of what I'd like to do is a projection of what could be a possibility in my perception of the future, which at some point will be a now. Yeah. So everything's happening in the now. Right. So my thoughts on past lives is that I think it makes more sense if it's multidimensional as opposed to linear. Because if, as is thought, that there are many different levels of consciousness and many different levels of existence and dimensions, that makes far more sense to me. Because we're all then existing in different dimensions. Simultaneously. Mm-hmm. And experiencing that in the now. So I used to do quite a lot of past life regression with people and things like this. And of course, they're having the regression in the now, but they're perceiving it because they've been taught that it's a linear world because we have time and even when when you see on these on the websites when they say choose your date of birth and then you have to scroll down and find and isn't it awful now we have with someone like me you have to go down 2 pages to find your birth year and you go I must be getting old now I'm not in the top page.
It takes twice as long to get there. I get that, yes.
But that gives us this understanding and acceptance that that's a linear world and it simply isn't.
Well, do you feel that we're actually going to a place like Atlantis right now in time and we have a choice? Do you think it's similar or is this a different time frame?
I think that as we evolve, it has to be different. But I do believe that the presence of the past is always within us in right now. Mm-hmm. And I think it was Churchill that said, that those who ignore the past, are destined to relive it. Mm-hmm. And I think that life, it becomes secular. Every empire has its day. Mm-hmm. Who'd have thought that the Greeks with all their stuff would have fallen, but they did. Now look at them. Now look at Greece. Mm-hmm. Look at Rome. Look at what Italy has become now. Mm-hmm. Look at France. Look at the British Empire, which the sun never set. Now look at it.
Right.
All right. So everyone has their day. They all have their 15 minutes of fame, if you like. And I think if we can learn the mistakes from the past, we have a good opportunity to be able to move forward. There are agendas that people want to do. There's this massive globalist agenda that wants to make everything vanilla, with no gender. So you can be who you want, live where you want, and hopefully it will all be okay. Well, it's probably not going to work.
We still need structure.
Yeah, you need some form of structure because I think you have to at some point you have to look to nature.
That's a good idea.
Nature is there for a reason. There are reasons why there are male and female lions, and I'm sure there are lions that really are not quite sure. But the fact of the matter is that biologically there are reasons why plant stamens and things like this mate and create new ones. What if we all decided that there were no genders, there were no sex, there were no breeding, children were an inconvenience, let's just live life as we want, let's just extract from life and just live it to the fullest, and just, where would we be in one generation time? So I do believe that we're given the instincts of things like family, of nurturing, of structure, of dependence and interdependence. I think those are instincts, and I think that you see that reflected in animal kind as well. But I also believe there is a higher element to humankind, and that's what creates our reason for being the primary species. You know, we have 95% the same DNA as a chimpanzee, but the 5% in difference is all concentrated on things like intimacy and speech and the use of fire, the use of tools, community. You know, those are things that are not often seen in the animal kingdom. And therefore, we should be looking more towards that 5% as opposed to the 95%. 95% is the old paradigm. What if we could embrace the 5%? What if we could become so empathetic with our fellow man that there was no need for war or no need for conflict or thievery or anything like this? What if we could live in that harmonious
So if
area?
we did, what would that look like, and how would males act differently than they do right now?
Well, I think, again, it comes down to power, as we said in the first place, is that men would actually have to willingly gift away that power, and women would actually have to willingly accept that gift of power. And it would have to be almost like this meritocracy, if you like, of saying, well, we all share a power. Who has, because we're all different. We'd like to think that we're all equal. We're not equal at all. This is not a fair world.
Yeah.
You know, some people are gifted in music. Some people are gifted in other things. I was gifted in violence. I got a short end of the stick, you know. It's like,
But you
I'm
turned
just
it
really
around.
good at this, you know. It's like, God.
But look at you now.
Yeah, and you know, that's called evolution, you know. And if you don't get evolution, you get revolution. And of course, revolution means to turn around. It's this cyclical thing, you know. And I believe there needs to be a cultural and a humanist revolution right now. We need to look at what brings us together as opposed to what pulls us apart. Because in pulling us apart, it emphasizes divisions, which plays into the narrative of a lot of people that want control. You know, so that's that. You can see it happening, and I think that people just need to learn to be kinder. I mean, they really do. You know, and you can tell a nation, you know, by the way it treats its animals as to how kind it actually is.
That's
you know,
true. It's a bit numb. You know? Yeah. I just interviewed a woman when I was down in Brazil last month, and she was talking. She's an American woman in Brazil saving dogs and rescuing dogs down there and sending them back to the U.S. with U.S. tourists because people down there don't look at dogs as though they have a soul or a spirit. They don't, and it's shocking. It's like,
in the
what?
Arab world, dogs are reincarnated thieves and should be kicked at all opportunities.
In China, they're truckloaded to
and then they,
horrific death.
Yeah, and
You know,
so I think that gives us a cautionary tale for who we are, because how we treat animals is likely to be how we treat ourselves.
well, the irony to that is that dogs are the one example of an animal that's domesticated that is unconditionally loving to you.
Yeah.
And loyal.
Absolutely, they were first on the scene. First,
I know.
they were first at the campfire. You know, ready to take the bones. You know, and they've been loyal ever since. We see, you know, I mean, my dog is a service dog. You know, they create such a wonderful way for us to express love.
Yes.
Because, you know, they are unconditional. You know, it's almost like they don't care whether, you know, what you look like. You know, they're just happy to see you all the time.
They don't
you
care
know?
if your feet smell today. If you're,
That's right.
They love you
sometimes prefer
anyway.
it. Yeah.
It's worth looking at the idea of males and females, masculine, feminine energy. And if we were to really turn this world around, you say more kindness, but we explored for a minute how masculine energy could change. How could feminine energy change? That would...
Yeah, I always find
Without
female
going over the
energy.
edge.
Yeah, female energy is internal. Masculine energy is external. Okay, so men create their power by pushing outwards and assuming things. Women control their power by bringing it in. They create life within. They create families that are internal. And anyone that believes that a woman is not powerful or is not a warrior, you try getting between her and her children, and you find out all the power of a warrior. You know, so I think regardless of species, you know, women are by far the most dangerous. You just really don't want to be able to cross them. And the reason is because they hold such powerful values, and those values are based upon life itself. So I think there is this balancing act of, you know, like for instance, if you were to take the extreme of masculinity, like the macho meathead, you know, type of, you know, guy, you know, which was shown in like the Popeye films, you know,
Right.
what if his name was Rufo, you know, that is not attractive to most people, including most women, you know. But you look at on the feminine side, and you see the, you know, the ditzy, airbrained, airbrushed woman. You know, that type of thing. It's not attractive either,
Right.
to most men, truth be known.
Well, they can't trust that.
No, because
Right.
because both of those are non-authentic, and they in any extreme, in anything, whether it be politically, whether it be in taste, whether it be in music, anything that is extreme will grate on you. So trying to find the middle ground where you have women that have some masculine traits of, you know, self-reliance, of trust, of empowerment, and men's ability to move towards the feminine spectrum of sensibility and sensitivity and empathy. Those are very attractive to the other sex. You know? So you get men that can cry at lassie films and women that can change a wheel on a car. You know,
You have a perfect marriage.
You got a perfect marriage. You know?
I love this. Thank you so much for being here today with us.
My pleasure.
Tell us again where people can find you.
Well, we're about to launch our new website, which is going to be very easy, simontreselyan.com. And we're also going to have treselyan.com and a whole bunch of things. My corporate site is starfireus, so STARFIRE US.com. But I can be found all over the net. I'm very easy to find, which wasn't always the case as a covert operator. But yeah, I can be easily found now. It's like, yeah, join me on Facebook. You know,
Under Simon Treselyan?
Simon Treselyan, yeah,
Okay.
that's right.
There you go. There you have it. And he has come and made our lives very much brighter today. So thank you. Thank you. Really.
Thank you,
This has
Winifred. I
been
appreciate it.
a very deep and explorative conversation we've had both on radio and here. And so I hope you'll share with everyone around the world. He has amazing artwork. And I say artwork because it is artwork, truly, in his writing and his upcoming projects in film and TV, possibly.
Yep.
Right? So we've
That's
got
right.
a lot to expect here. Hopefully we'll have you back and you'll
I
find
would
time
love
to
that.
visit with us and you won't be too
Always.
busy.
I'm a neighbour after all.
Oh, that's so sweet. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Really. All right, everybody, go jolly out there and go out and make somebody else's life brighter. You're listening to Making Life Brighter.